1 Timothy 4, verse 15 tells us to throw ourselves into our work so that everyone can see our progress. I think about Nehemiah, a character in the Old Testament. He was sent back to Jerusalem to rebuild the wall. The Bible tells us that he prayed first. He prayed for supernatural favor with the rulers. And he prayed for God to move. But the Bible also tells us in that whole story, in those whole 52 days that he rebuilt the wall, there was not one supernatural miracle. And that tells me that sometimes we're gonna pray and God's gonna provide a supernatural miracle. But sometimes we are the miracle. We are the change. Through our work and through our work ethic and through us getting out and doing something, God is gonna perform and execute something miraculous. And I find myself in a construction site. And the first thing you're gonna do to build anything is you're gonna pour a solid foundation. And our solid foundation has to be built on prayer. It's the first thing we should always do. The next thing we need to do is we need to plan. There needs to be a blueprint. There needs to be some systems that go into place. And there's a certain point that we've just got to put our work boots on, get our gloves, and do some work. At Action Church, we do work. The A-Team is a perfect example of this. We set up and tear down every week, and we could walk circles around those trailers all day, and we could pray and we can plan. But until somebody takes that gate down and pushes those cases, nothing's ever gonna get set up. We could go walk and pray in those communities, and we need to do that first. But if we never do anything, then maybe nothing will ever happen. We need to pray and we need to plan, but then we need to put on our work clothes and go to work. So my question to you today is, where will you stop? Will you stop at the foundation with prayer? Will you stop at the planning stage, or will you carry it to completion just like Nehemiah did and finish that wall, finish that project, finish that thing that God is calling you to do? Because there are people that you know in your sphere of influence that need Jesus. Pray for them, plan how to reach them, and then do some work, meeting them where they are and hopefully arranging a meeting with Jesus Christ so their life and their eternity will never be the same. What's up, Action Church? We doing good? Welcome to week nine of our reaction and talking about we do work. Got my work clothes on, got my holy jeans, my black tee. This is what I go to work in every single week. Anybody just love their work clothes? Nobody does any work in these clothes. I'm just kidding. I'm just making an excuse for looking like I'm 12 today. Hey, we do work. Here's what we're doing. This summer, we're taking these summer months as we come into back to school and in this growth season of our church, as we launch into our fourth location. We're really reminding ourselves of who we are. And as we've grown, so many of you are new to the church. Maybe you're new today. And we're walking through our reaction statements. What are our values? We believe that Jesus' action on the cross, it demands a response from us. And we call it our reaction. We find it in 1 Timothy chapter 4, starting in verse 12, going through verse 16. And in 1 Timothy chapter 4, it says, set an example for the believers. And then Paul goes on to write all of these different examples. And if you missed any of the first 8 weeks of this series, I highly encourage you. If you're new to the church, go figure out who we are. If you call Action Church home, you've missed any of our weeks, go check out how we're setting an example for believers, setting an example for the church and for the world and how we live. This is who we are as Action Church. And today we find ourselves one of the last two verses in our series. It's in 1 Timothy chapter 4, and let's read together in verse 15. It says, give your complete attention. Everybody say complete. Your complete attention to these matters. Throw yourself into your tasks so that everyone will see your progress, that there's some work that we have to do. I wrote this down this week. We pray like it depends on God. We work like it depends on us. God uses hard work and faithful people who are willing to do it. But what do we work at? It's such an ambiguous term maybe. I want to clarify it today, and we find it in Psalm 27, verses 4 through 6. Two things that I want to highlight that our work should go towards. It says this, it says, the one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfections. Maybe a different translation would be the Lord's presence, that his presence is perfect, and that we delight, that we should work, we should pursue, we should seek God. We meditate in his temple, for he will conceal me there when troubles come. He will hide me in his sanctuary. He will place me out of reach on a high rock. Then I will hold my head high above my enemies who surround me. Last half of verse 6. And his sanctuary I will do this. I will offer sacrifices with shouts of joy, singing and praising the Lord with music. That there are a couple things we need to work at. The first one, delighting in the Lord's perfections, or delighting in the Lord's presence. The first thing I want you to write down, what are we working towards, is this. We're going to seek God in a world that seeks convenience and comfort. That we're going to work to pursue God. And we're not just going to tell you to do that, we're going to give you an opportunity to do that as well. Starting next week, we're starting 21 days of prayer as an entire church. August 13th through the first week of September, we're going to meet every single morning, Monday through Saturday, early Monday through Friday, and then Saturday morning at our Sanford location, and we're going to seek God together. Let it be said of Action Church that we delight in His perfections, that when tough times come, we seek His presence for refuge, that we build our life and our family and our businesses on God, that we are going to work, but we're going to work at building a foundation on the presence of God. The second thing I find here is that we're going to offer sacrifices with joy. That we're going to work, but we're going to work with a great attitude. There is a sacrifice. If you study the Old Testament, how the priest got ready to offer sacrifices, it was a lot of work. There was work and there was worship. And we need to worship, but there is work in our worship. We don't just worship with our hands raised on a Sunday morning. We worship through our giving of tithes and offerings. We worship through our serving of people. I wrote this down, and I would love for you to do the same. Serve people in a world that serves self. I think about our church yesterday on a Saturday. Saturday is a day that we serve ourselves. We're off. Most people are off, and we're excited. We go to sporting events, or we go to the lake, or we go to the beach. And man, we had an amazing day yesterday serving people in a world that serves self. Over 200 team members gave of their Saturday to go and serve at our back-to-school outreach. And I've got some numbers for you. Pastor Kenneth and Kelly and our whole team, our A-team, did an amazing job yesterday serving people. We gave away 550 backpacks just yesterday, fully stuffed backpacks, like everything. Smattering of applause here. Come on, I know Sanford and Oviedo are a little more excited. 550, amazing. We have 200 more going out this week to various communities. 203 gallons of gas were given away yesterday. Hey, the Sanford police had to shut down our gas outreach because traffic on 1792 was backing up so much. So that's good. That's good problems. We gave away 120 haircuts yesterday. 120 kids got all that so fresh and so clean going back to school. Got that fresh fade, got lined up. Got their hair did. I don't even know anything else. We gave away hundreds of meals, thousands of pounds of chicken was smoked, had some ribs, 479 snow cones. How do you know it's a good day when you give away 479 snow cones? I ate 300 of them, but that's not important. It's an amazing what we get to do, and it's not just once a year. It's every single month through Serve Saturday. It's every single week through different outreach small groups. It's every Thanksgiving and every Christmas that we are going to do work. We're going to work in our relationship with the Lord, and we're going to work to serve people. We're going to work, and we're going to worship. You know, I was thinking about this week, the only problem with work is it's work. It's hard. Anybody do some yard work growing up? Maybe you still do some yard work. You haven't realized that it may be actually cheaper and more efficient to pay somebody. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying opportunity cost, heaven, hell, reality, and we're wasting time. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say. But I remember growing up, we had 3 acres, and I remember doing yard work with my dad, and it was amazing. As I got older, the load began to shift. I would try and sleep later, and he would try and do more yard work. I don't know what was happening, but I would always push mow, and he would edge and weed eat. We had some land, like I said, and so I kind of felt like I got the raw end of the deal. I mean, he got to stay kind of in the shade, and it was a lot less work, and I was pushing, and I was pushing, and I was pushing. It was probably all about perspective. We were probably doing the same amount of work, but I had a little bit of an attitude. Anybody ever got put to work and had a little bit of an attitude? So that was me. And then I remember I was about 14 or 15 years old, and my dad, for his birthday, my mom got him a riding lawnmower, which, ladies, getting a guy a riding lawnmower is like getting you a gym membership. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not something that you're like, oh, yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you so much for making. That was supposed to be funnier, no? Guys, you should not get them that. I got you a treadmill because I love you. No. I love you just the way you are. I love the yard just the way it is. Let's pay somebody else to do it. Don't get them a lawnmower, get them a lawn service. Come on, guys. In Jesus' name. But I remember my dad got a riding lawnmower, and then I didn't push mow anymore. He rode the thing, and I got the weed eater. I got the bad end of the deal. But he was paying the bill, so I didn't complain. But I remember this. Here's what I'm telling you the story. I remember how I learned to dress to do yard work from my dad. He would wear things, and if you look around in your neighborhoods, there are men and women wearing things doing yard work they would never wear anywhere else. It's like, how old is that hat? Where do you store it? Because I can smell it from here. Like, where did you get those jorts? And when did you actually wear those jorts? And how many holes does that cutoff shirt have in it? Whose socks are those? Those shoes are disgusting. There are things that you can wear doing yard work that you can't wear anywhere else. Like, we would call somebody if you wore that in public. But you're like, I don't care what it looks like. I've got to go do some work. I think that's how we're supposed to be as Christians. I don't care what my worship looks like. I don't care how hot and sweaty I was yesterday in the field in Sanford. I've got on my work clothes because God needs to be worshiped and people need to be served. That we're gonna do some work. We're gonna put on our work clothes. We're gonna dig in and we're gonna do some work. We're gonna dig deeper in our relationship with God, and we're gonna dig deeper in serving people. That's what I want to talk about today. Just digging deep. Just planting something that's built to last. That doesn't just look good, but that serves a purpose. I want to ask you two questions before we get in really to the meat of the message today, the bulk of the message. Are you planted? Have you worked and planted yourself in the shallowness of self or the soil of God? Where are you planted? This is a more practical question. We all do work. It's a great statement, Justin. Everybody's working at something. You're right. We all do work. But is your work working? Is your work, is it working? I want to use this bonsai tree today. Bonsai! Oh, Daniel-san. Oh, I saw. I think actually I watched it yesterday. It was his left knee, so I think he was like this. His jeans are too tight. I could get in the full crane, and then don't mess with me, because the crane is undefeated. No Karate Kid fans in here. 1984 called. Once it's Blockbuster back. I think it was the #1 movie in 1984. Can you imagine how bad the movies were back then? Bonsai. I want to give credit where credit is due. I actually heard this illustration from an amazing pastor in New Zealand, Pastor Paul DeYoung, and he preached it when I was in Australia using this bonsai tree. And he's actually going to be with us next year for a weekend, and I'm going to go down and see their church as well. Largest church in New Zealand. Amazing, amazing man. Faithful in ministry for several decades, and just an amazing new friend and mentor. But this bonsai tree, this thing's cute, right? Anybody love a good bonsai tree? How many of you own a bonsai tree? 7 of you. Me either. I don't own this. We bought this at the Home Depot. Love bonsai tree. It's cute, right? Have you noticed like this thing, if you're up close to it, if you guys can come in over here, it's like a real tree. Like it looks like a tree. It has the trunk and a root system and leaves, and this thing is growing. This bonsai, it's cute. But what's crazy about a bonsai is the same seed that would create this bonsai is the same seed that would then grow into a full tree. And the first thing I'll talk about when it comes to bonsai is the seed is important, but so is the soil. Like we know about the seed in Scripture that you sow sparingly and you reap sparingly, that we plant seed, and the seed is so important. But the seed is merely potential, and it takes care, but it takes good soil for a seed to grow. So practically what I want to give you today is your environment, that environments determine destiny. So what you're planted in, are you planted in self, or are you planted in a deep, rich soil in the things of God? It matters. I remember Bentley came home from VPK, and he brought home a little plant. Have you seen this? If you've been in VPK in Seminole County, maybe you've done this as well. But they bring a plant home in a little styrofoam cup. Anybody ever seen that before? And then we watered that thing. We loved that thing. We put that thing in the sun. It sprouted for like a half a day, and then Kingston kicked it over. You know what I mean? It was so much work for so little production. It matters where you're planted. Your environment determines your destiny. Think about a fish. You put a goldfish in a bowl, and then you flush it 3 days later. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's ever been there before? I did more goldfish funerals growing up than I can come to terms with. It was really sad, and watch down to its destiny. But you put it in an aquarium, you put it in a lake or a pond, it grows. It's not a little bitty goldfish. You got some big goldfish, and you go to like a Japanese restaurant like Kobe, and there's big scary goldfish. But your environment determines your destiny. Where are you planted? This bonsai, see what happens is you put it in a plant, and it's cute, but the shallowness of its soil, it keeps it the same size. So it has everything that a full-grown tree would have, but just less, just smaller. It's stunted. The growth is stunted because of the soil. Sounds like a lot of Christians I know. That we're not working at our relationship with God. We're not working to serve people. So we're stagnant. And the depth of your relationship determines the height in which God can build you. Your depth determines your height. There are too many bonsai Christians that are never reaching their purpose. You may say, Justin, I'm still a believer. I still love the Lord. This bonsai you can be a bonsai and still be a Christian, but you're underdeveloped and you're shallow. And there's just so much more that you could be doing. Here's what I want to talk about today. Bonsai Christians versus planted Christians. We all do work, but is your work working? Here's the first thing a bonsai Christian does. A bonsai Christian requires constant maintenance and becomes imbalanced. A bonsai requires constant maintenance. The tree does as well as the Christian. 2 Timothy 4 verse 3 says this, "For a time is coming when people will no longer listen to sound and wholesome teaching. They will follow their own desires and will look for teachers who will tell them whatever their itching ears want to hear." Does that sound like America right now? Man, I don't like that. I'm going somewhere else. I don't like how that was said. I don't like how that was done. I don't like you, so I don't listen to you. I don't like you, so I defriend you. You're on the other side, so you are my enemy. I'm just going to follow and find what I need. The crazy thing about a bonsai is it becomes imbalanced because it begins to grow towards the sun. And wherever the sun is, wherever you place it, maybe on your back patio, or if it's growing in the backyard, in a garden, wherever it's faced to the sun, that will begin to be where it grows. So it will become imbalanced. This thing, if we allowed it, if the sun was over here, would just grow and grow and grow until it actually toppled over and even killed itself. Just searching to find something to feed it. It sounds like too many Christians that we're not founded or grounded on anything, so we just began to grow towards whoever is telling us what we want to hear. That feels warm, that feels fuzzy, that makes me feel good, let me grow there. Oh, I can live that way and still be fine. Oh, I can make that decision. Oh, I can make that compromise. Okay, that makes me feel good, so I grow towards it. We become imbalanced. A bonsai also, it requires constant maintenance. People that own bonsais know you have to water it every single day. Not only do you have to soak it, but you have to spray it. So you just go by the bonsais and you just spray it like all day. Like this thing just needs constant maintenance. It's cute and it's pretty, but I just have to spray it all day. If that doesn't sound like a lot of Christians in today's church, I just got to keep spraying. Like I just got to spray you with one more podcast. And one more self-help book, and one more conference I can chase because I have no revelation, so I settle for inspiration. You can only grow so deep without a personal revelation of who Jesus is for you. You can only share so many Facebook posts. And I love this pastor, and I love that pastor, I love this author, and I love that author, and I love this worship, and I love that worship. Do you love Jesus? And do you have a personal revelation of who he is? Are you planted in self? It looks cute, and it's going to heaven, but it takes so much maintenance to keep a bonsai healthy. There's so much more for you. We can be planted. We can be planted. It's cute and it's pretty. I don't know a lot about horticulture. I don't even know if I said that word correctly. But what I do know is that when you go into the Home Depot and you pick out a bonsai, they have all these pretty flowers. Seen the pretty flowers? You know, the prettiest flowers in there die the fastest. They're called seasonal flowers. You plant them because you don't know any better, and you go get them in your garden and your flower bed looks pretty, and then a week later the weather changes and you're like, where did my flowers go? They're dead. Because they had no root system, because they're seasonal. A bonsai Christian, a seasonal Christian, when it's convenient, when it's good, when it feels good, I'm all in. But when the weather shifts, the root system isn't deep enough to keep us grounded. We got too many seasonal and bonsai Christians. It's quiet in here. That's why we did salvation in the beginning of service today. Oh, man. And I wore a t-shirt, black t-shirt. It's hot. It's hot in the garden with the bonsais. One other thing right here before we get into planted bonsai Christians, they're pruned for appearance. This bonsai is not pruned for growth because it can't grow. It's pruned to make it look pretty. And bonsai Christians, we want to be helped when it makes us look better. We respond as teachable, like saying things like, yes, I agree, praise God, I will change, but we never change because we're not pruned for growth, we're just pruned for appearance. But planted Christians, here's what planted Christians are. Planted Christians allow periodic pruning to maximize growth. That when I need to be challenged, when I need to be cut down, when I need to be refined, I allow it. Because the goal is not to look pretty, church, the goal is to produce. Like the goal is to produce things for the glory of God. I was thinking about it this week. Too many Christians are bonsai Christians, and we want to be pretty. We want to be noticed. Can somebody notice me? Can somebody affirm my calling? Can somebody affirm my dream? But that's not the game. The game is to produce and cause the praise to go to Jesus. Here's what a tree does. You go by a tree. What does a tree do every single season? If it's planted in good soil, what happens in harvest time? It does what? It produces fruit. Like oranges come out of an orange tree, apples come out of an apple tree, whatever other fruits grow on trees, they come out of those trees. I've exhausted my horticulturist knowledge. Have you ever gotten a piece of fruit? Maybe you've been out on a farm, you've plucked that fruit from the tree and you eat it and it's so good. And then you have a personal, intimate, authentic conversation and you thank that tree. No. Thank you, Mr. Tree, for doing exactly what you were created to do. But Christians, we want to get credit. Did you see me? Like I came to set up today. Did anybody notice? I didn't post it on Instagram, so it wasn't actually real. Did somebody like that I serve the Lord? No, we don't thank it. Hey, some of you aren't into growing things. That's fine. How many of you love coffee? I love coffee. I love it. Keeps me going. It keeps me healthy. Keeps me alive. Love it. I've never thanked the pot for making coffee. I've never said, Mr. Filter, amazing job. Well, you filtered the beans and the grains and produced this liquid. Thank you so much. No. I just enjoyed what was produced. It's the same with planted Christians. It's not about you. We don't produce so we can be praised. We produce so that God can be praised. And our production is what God is calling us to. Planted Christians allow periodic pruning for production. John 15:2 says this. He cuts off every branch of what? Of mine. It's not about us. He cuts off every branch of mine because there's no me. You die to me. You crucify me when you pick up the cross. Daily, I pick up my cross and I follow you. I surrender me and I pick up God's purpose for my life. Cuts off every branch of mine that doesn't produce fruit, and he prunes the branches that do bear fruit so they will produce even more. That means even the things that I'm good at, I should allow God to speak to and become even better. We're planted in the shallowness of self or the soil of God. We all do work, but is your work working? Bonsai Christians, second thing I want to write down about bonsai Christians. You're so excited, I can tell. Come back in 2 weeks, very encouraging message. This week, next week, pruning messages. So if you need to skip because you don't like to be pruned, if you like being a bonsai, just check out the rest of this service. don't listen and then skip next week for sure because we're talking about living to please God. And then come back in 2 weeks. We'll have baptisms. We'll celebrate. You'll love it. You'll stay the same, but you'll love it. Bonsai Christians, they fail to reach their full potential. They fail to reach their full potential. Proverbs 18:2 says, fools have no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. The reason this bonsai stops growing is not because of effort, not because of potential, not really even because of the seed. It's because in this pot, what happens is the roots have nowhere to grow out or down. So a process happens called root binding, that these roots begin to bind together so closely that they fight for water and they fight for nutrients, that they actually kill each other. And so it keeps growing in itself. It's like an ingrown toenail or an ingrown hair. It's painful and it dies and it's ugly. That's what we look like as bonsai Christians. When we don't plant ourselves in God, when we plant ourselves in self, we have this root binding and we're our own worst enemy. It's when we value our opinions higher than our discipline, higher than our doctrine or our devotion. We say, my opinion matters. My opinion needs to be heard. It doesn't. Your opinions and your desires and mine were crucified on the cross with Jesus Christ. We die to self and we pick up service to Jesus. There's root binding. You know what else happens with plants and with bonsai trees and other trees? That if you uproot a healthy plant, most plants take 3 years to get back to where they were before. We wonder why as Christians we're not growing. It's because we want inspiration and we need to be watered and we need high maintenance and we're going wherever our itching ears want to hear, wherever feels good and whatever feeds me, and we're uprooting ourselves place after place, church after church, ministry after ministry. And what happens is the roots get shorter and they get to be about you, and it's just about survival. And it takes years for a plant to get back to that place. You say, Pastor Justin, that's way too drastic. There's no way it takes 3 years. Maybe not. But what if it takes 3 weeks or 3 months, 6 months? What if we just planted roots in a place? And this is not a church building message. This is not saying you have to stay here. If it's not here, let this be the last time. Pick up yourself, plant your family somewhere, and stay there. And hey, there's going to be dry seasons. There's going to be series you like and series you don't like. There's going to be things that we do that you like and things that you don't like. But plant yourself somewhere. Just like seasons come and go, your feelings will come and go in the house of God. But stay planted somewhere so you can grow. When we plant in a place, God will begin to grow us. And there's all different types of people. Have you noticed that? I don't know how long you've been at Action Church, but we've got young, old, we've got white, black, brown, everybody. It just makes it better. You know, I was studying this week about these plants, and this is probably the last week I'll ever study plants because it's not very interesting to me. But I found this study. This is a Chinese elm tree, and the Chinese did this study where they planted the same type of fruit, the same vegetable in these fields, all separate. And then in a field right next to it, so the same climate in the same area, the same rain percentage, the same everything, the same soil. The plants that were planted in isolation and the plants that were planted all together, like apples and oranges and tomatoes and every vegetable and fruit and every garden you could ever do, when they were planted together, it was so much better. Here was actually the results. Don't just take my word for it. Here are the results. The plants that were planted together had an 89% increase in harvest and 94% less disease. That's crazy. Because it wasn't all about just survival. That what I had was shared and what you had was shared, and disease was less because it wasn't selfish and it wasn't just one type of person, one type of thing. That's the way church should be. You may be asking yourself this question right now. Is he saying that the church isn't for me, that I'm here for the church? Yes. Like you're here to give back. Let me give one caveat to that, and I want every location, like, look at me. The church is here for you. The church is here for people that are lost or injured. We're here for you. And if that's you, we love you. In fact, this message is not even really for you yet. There are things that need to be healed, things that need to be restored, things that need to be given to you so that you can be healthy, so that you can plant yourself. But once we're healthy, church, the church is not for us. If you are a healthy, mature believer, you are here for the church. You have a role to plant yourself, to do work and to worship God and to serve Him. Are we planted in shallowness or the depth of the soil of God? Because potential and our growth, it's really what's in the balance. Again, I want you to hear, you can go to heaven being a bonsai. You just can't reach your potential. This is as big as this thing's ever going to be in this pot. That's it. I want to show you a picture. I think they got it up there. I want to show you a picture of what this bonsai, it's a Chinese elm, what it could actually grow into. Can we bring that up? That's a full tree. Like balanced, growing in the right direction, fulfilling its purpose, providing shade, providing things to the life around it. This one's just pretty to look at on a shelf. Like I wonder how much better our church would be if we weren't just pretty to look at on a shelf, but we were planted in the heart of God, in the soil of God, and we grew into everything that He has for us. It's tough, but can I give you some good news? It's never too late to be planted. If you've accepted Jesus, and hopefully we settled that earlier at all of our locations, you're alive and you have potential. And it's never too late to go from the pot of self to the soil of God. It's never too late to go from a bonsai to a Chinese elm. Here's the good news. It's found in Psalm 92, and we're closing with this. It says, but the godly, everybody say godly. Now everybody, get over your feelings. We're okay. Take a deep breath. But the godly will flourish like palm trees. So the godly, those of us that have made a decision to follow Jesus, those of us that have said, hey, I want to be used by God. We may be stuck right here, but if we're planted in God's house, godly will flourish like palm trees and grow strong like the cedars of Lebanon. And here's the good news, verse 13. For they are transplanted to the Lord's own house. You can be transplanted. Like you can be taken out of that pot of self, out of that bonsai Christianity, and be planted into the house of God. They flourish in the courts of our God. Even in old age, they will still produce fruit. They will remain vital and green. Even in their old age, they will produce fruit. If you plant here, it's not a seasonal deal. It's not a short-term deal. That a planted Christian, it grows deep roots and it flourishes. So like when storms come, you flourish. When the sun shines, you flourish. Because the storms don't move you and the warmth doesn't change you. You are planted and you grow. And that's your job. Like there is nothing else. We work to build our life on Jesus, and we grow so that other people can see where we're planted. That's the game. And here's the final thing that I found this week in my study. There's an amazing thing that happens. How can these old trees produce so much fruit? Well, do you know that as you study them, it's not as much the old tree producing fruit just in and of itself. What happens when you plant a tree in an ecosystem, the larger the ecosystem, the more protection and the more production. The protection comes from strong trees growing and securing the soil and securing the rest of the trees from wind. But then the production comes because here's what happens. There are always droughts, and there are always dry seasons, and there are always tough circumstances. There's a term called root touch. And what they found is the roots will grow down so deep from that old, mature tree, from that old, mature Christian. Maybe just wise in your faith, maybe wise in your years. Come on, we have some of those here at Action Church. But you've got so much wisdom and maturity, you've grown down, and as younger trees younger people in the faith, they plant themselves next to you when a season of drought comes or when a storm comes or when things come and they need something. There's a term called root touch, and the roots will literally wrap themselves around each other, and the tree will pass to the other tree everything that it needs. It's amazing. So the mature tree is not just producing fruit. What it's doing, it's not just adding. You weren't called to add, you were called to multiply. Your gifts are not meant to be in a bonsai plant, a bonsai pot. Your gifts were meant to be planted because it's not just about you. It's about producing so others see the glory of God, but it's about touching other people because they have something that you need. Our church has grown fast, but that doesn't mean that we're not called to grow deep. We're not shallow. We're not immature. We're not going to be selfish. We're not going to be high maintenance. If you're high maintenance and you're a Christian, I love you so much. Go sit on somebody else's shelf because heaven and hell are in the balance, so we're not going to grow for us. We're going to save you, but we're not going to spray you. I don't have time for that. We have time to save lost people. We have time to, through root touch, help hurting people, but we don't have time to spray anybody. You can spray yourself or you can find somebody else to do that because we are going to be found growing deeper, not to brag about how deep we are and how many degrees we are. No, we're going to go deeper because when we grow deeper, we make a difference for other people. And I've got to be deep enough. And I've got to be strong enough, and you've got to be deep enough, and you've got to be strong enough. So when storms come, we don't get selfish. We show our stability. When life happens, we don't get insecure and wonder what's going to happen. No. We provide security to those around us. In fact, I believe God spoke to me this week, and I think that's why a growing church is God's design. Because the larger the ecosystem, the more protection and production. God, in the rooms across our city that Action Church is meeting today, there are people that have what you need. God has all that you need, but there's somebody sitting next to you that can give you a touch, can give you an encouragement, that can give you a little bit of life when you need it most. And hey, those relationships, they take some work. I don't know if your marriage is like my marriage, but every tough season is followed by a great season because we work through the tough stuff. Every team, every church, every relationship, the work of digging and planting produces something great. I just want to ask you today, and we're going to have a time of commitment in just a moment. I just want to ask you to begin to ponder this question. Every eye looking at me, what's keeping you in the pot of self? Can I just challenge you and ask you, after hearing this today and looking at your own life, is it worth it? Like, is it worth it to stay comfortable and put together and manicured? Or could it be more fulfilling to plant yourself in the field called the local church? Action Church, and see what you can produce and how you can help those around you. Let's bow our heads at every location, every head bowed, every eye closed. I want to call you to, we already handled salvation. Dozens of people gave their life to Jesus already today. This is for Christians. Say, I want to do some work. I'm going to show up to 21 days of prayer. I'm going to be at Serve Saturday. I'm going to go to Action Steps today. I'm going to lead a small group. I'm going to serve in my high school. I'm going to join the setup team. I'm going to join the Winter Park launch team. I'm going to try out for the worship team. I'm going to run the camera. I'm going to be in the parking lot. I'm going to invite people at Starbucks and Chick-fil-A and at lunch today. I'm going to be planted. I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to listen to less podcasts this week and actually open up my own Bible and let the person of Jesus Christ speak to me. I'm going to grow. I'm going to plant. And I want it to be here. I don't want this to be emotion, so every head bowed, every eye closed. I don't want you to do it because other people are doing it. I want to know who's in our ecosystem. I want to know who is planting themselves here and says, we can build together, we can grow together. Come on, raise your hands. That's you. Say, I want to plant. I'm not going to be selfish anymore. Come on, raise them high. Say, that's me. That's me. I got hundreds of hands up here at Winter Springs. Come on, Oviedo, Sanford. I want to plant and I want to grow. You can put your hands down. God, I pray for every hand that was lifted. God, I pray that you begin to speak to us right now. God, you begin to encourage us right now. God, we're planting ourselves on you. Good soil. God, I pray for every family. God, I pray for every individual, every young person that just raised their hand, that they would begin to produce fruit in Jesus' name. God, allow them to find their gifts maybe this month at Action Steps, maybe through a conversation with a mentor. God, reveal to them what that fruit is in their life. What is their specific call? Yes, it's to make disciples, but what does it look like for them? What is their passion? What are their gifts? And allow them to plant and to seek you, and from that place begin to produce the amazing fruit that you have for them to produce. Not for their own praise, but for the praise of Jesus Christ. God, allow us all to plant ourselves and to grow and to produce. But God, let us be careful never to take the credit for it, to take the glory or the acclaim, but to point it all to you. That we're growing deeper, not for us, but for others. We're growing deeper because your word calls us to it. And there we are solid, we are grounded, and we can be all that you're calling us to be. We love you. We praise you in this place. And everybody said, amen. Church, can we celebrate what God did this morning?